Okay, good to see you. Good to see you all again. Before I talk, because it's Black History Month, so I'm continuing to honor that month by talking about Black American Catholics on their way to sainthood. But before I get to that, I received an email and a question about the minor project. As you know, the minor project was due, and I have started grading it. I've finished just about everybody. There are just a few people at the end. I'm sorry. You know, if you come with the end of the alphabet, I apologize. But I'm getting there, okay? So if you have any questions about the grade you got, you can always email me. That's certain, and I can go over specifically any issues. But I do want to talk about the rubric, because hopefully the rubric also spells out what I'm looking for. Did you look at the rubric when you? Okay, good. So there are basically four parts, and they're all weighted differently. God bless you, Ms. Callahan. Already, Ms. Callahan? I'm losing you already? All right. The top weighted things I'm looking for are, did you answer the questions and did you answer them correctly? Okay, so I'm looking, did you address the questions, however many questions I give you? Okay, so by addressing, I mean, not just that you gave me some information, but it looks like, you try to, think about the answer and craft your answer, you're able to make distinctions and stuff like that. So yeah, an issue I found with, some of the answers or the work was people didn't spell out which questions they were actually answering. They just gave me one big blob of text, like one paragraph. And I'm sitting there then trying to figure out, I'm assuming that you're answering them in order, but that's not always clear sometimes. So that would affect your grade. Or if you gave me, just a bare bones amount of information, okay, you addressed the question, or you answered the question, but did you fully address the question that I'm looking for? Because if you look at the rest of the rubric, I'm looking for thought. I'm looking to see how much research you're going to do, how much effort you're going to put into answering the question. So I want to see if you go above and beyond. Now, what would you think is going above and beyond? How would you define that? Well, I guess I should say, how do you think I would define it? What do you think I might be looking for? What do you think is above and beyond? You answer the question, but what could you do to show that you did look it up, you tried to make an effort, you're not just spitballing? How would you show your teacher that? Mr. Belfield.
They give like side details or like background info.
Good. Give me details. Give me details. I mean, you'd say like, where does the swastika come from? I then think I'm not giving away any information because, it's already due, and I think everybody did it for the most part. What is it? What's its connection? Where's it coming from? What's its connection? Okay, so the picture that I gave you of the person who's wearing this image, okay, what is this image? You could show me sources that you've used. Some of you did do that. You gave me, I used this website, or you looked at this book. And so you're showing me, not asking me to assume the work that you did. I know that you did the work, some of you, because, you wrote a lot. That's good. But did you go above and beyond and show me where you got the information from? All right. So I'm looking for that. The information that you gave me, this ties into addressing the question. How completely are you addressing the question? Because some of you jumped into, like, you already knew it was a swastika. Okay, you knew it was a symbol of hate and all this stuff, but you don't explain why it's a symbol of hate. Okay, it's associated with the Nazis. Okay, who or what? Why are they considered a symbol of hate? Why is Adolf Hitler considered a symbol of hate? Tell me that. Don't assume that I know why. And its connection to religion. Yes, Hinduism is generally true. But some of you also noted that Buddhism, which we are studying in this course, also appropriates this image. Some of you mentioned Jainism, which is not on the syllabus. So you need to read the question a little bit more carefully, because I put in italics and underlined it that we're learning in this course. But I did appreciate that extra information. I don't think I penalized anyone for that. And some of you made the connection with I got you. I'll come with Judaism, which is interesting. Also Catholicism, but let's say with Judaism, which is interesting because yes, the swastika has a connection with Judaism because people wearing the swastika tried to wipe the Jews out. But I don't think you could say that the swastika is associated with their religion. Like, I don't think you're going to go into any synagogue or temple and see, like, the swastika hanging from the rafters. Whereas if you did go to a Hindu temple, you very might likely would. Because it's not a symbol of racism. That's another thing. Some of you needed to consider your context. But sure, in Western history, it's become a symbol of racism. But only recently, as some of you mentioned in your answers, the swastika appears also in some Western European cultures, in Scandinavia, in Germany, and stuff like that. That's why the Nazis appropriated it, because they saw that connection, with the swastika, and the Aryans from India. And they saw it and they just took it into their political representation or a symbol of their political group. But for the longest period of human history, and still today, if you go to India or Bhutan or countries like that, you'll see swastikas painted all over the place. And they're for good luck. They're blessed. They're a blessing. They're not racist at all. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. And that might, if you need more specifics, you can talk to me either after class or send me an email. But that's what I'm looking for. Now, Ms. Hedgepeth, what was your question? Oh, Ms. Hedgepeth, sorry about that. If you remember, then just raise your hand again, okay? So that's what I'm looking for. I want you to not just answer the question. That's appropriate. I want you to answer it correctly. Good. If some of you said that it's a good luck, the swastika is a good luck symbol, or it means good luck or something like that, that's fine. That's not actually what it does mean. It's more like all is well, or it is well. But okay. I mean, if you dug a little bit deeper, you would have found that. But if you, that's fine. What else? Okay, so just take this information and use it for the next project that's coming up, okay? And if you want to get a higher grade, just try to, do more work, I guess is the simple answer. Write a little bit more. If you're using sources, tell me which sources you're using, okay, if it's not coming out of your own head, and stuff like that, all right? Yeah.
Could you possibly provide us some samples of what a 10 out of 10 would be? Because I'm not a lot better what it actually.
So you want me to go and answer the whole question for you and then give it to, okay, I'll think about that, yes. No, I understand what you're saying.
Where you got the information. I want this amount of money, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm leaving it to your judgment. Because that's how I got to give you some leeway so that then I can critique it. If I'm telling you do this, that, and the other, then you're just fulfilling my expectations and I'm basically doing the work for you. I want to give you some freedom to see what you're going to do with it. All right. Are you just going to answer the questions and get it over with? Are you going to try to think about, answer the questions, but then think about what the relationships are between, say, the Nazis and these religions, or the Nazis and this symbol, or the symbol and these other religions? And are you going to, when I say above and beyond, yeah, that's one thing I'll tell you specifically. Sources help. If you can show me, you don't have to inundate me with sources, but if you can show me that you actually put effort into it and you just didn't sit down and say, okay, very quickly, answer all the questions and move on. But you can say, I took this extra effort to look stuff up. Okay? Does that help? Okay. All righty. Black History Month. Henriette Delisle. We're talking today about Venerable Henriette Delisle, a woman of color from New Orleans, Louisiana. She lived from 1813 until 1862. And this is an actual picture of her, apparently our only picture of Venerable Henriette. Okay? I mean, she doesn't, I'm not trying to be stereotypical, but she doesn't look black. I mean, if you looked at this picture, you might not walk away or come at immediately saying, oh, she's a woman of color, but she is. She's of mixed race, white and black. Her father was French, and her mother was African, maybe some Spanish mixed in, but she was, I guess, mainly African. So that certainly qualified her as non-white in that culture. And that's how she was defined. She was, at that period of time, they called people like that Creoles. So she was called a Creole of color. So she was of mixed ancestry. But she was a free woman. She wasn't a slave. She wasn't enslaved. She was free. Yeah, and if you know anything about the history of Louisiana and New Orleans, it was under the control of the French Empire. So there's a lot of French influence, and the history is connected with France. So that kind of explains her French ancestry. And the fact that people still speak French down in Louisiana, they speak Cajun and Creole. And their legal system is a mixture of the French Civil Code and aspects of the French Civil Code from the 1800s and 1700s, and English common law. So if you ever want to go down to Louisiana and practice law, you kind of have to learn both codes, which are a little bit different in ways. Anywho, Henriette de Lisle. So 1830, actually, I got to skip over that. My notes are a little bit jumbled. As a young woman, and see, here she is, rather attractive young woman. The practice was in society at that time to kind of move attractive young women off to a man of some sort, like a concubine. Maybe it would lead to marriage, possibly, but a lot of times it was just to get them attached to a man as a concubine, or you could say a mistress. And her family tried to do that to her, but she did not. I mean, she wanted to be a sister. She wanted to be a nun. She felt called to religious life, and so being unmarried. But she also felt that this practice was a violation of the sacrament of marriage. It was an offense against the sacrament of marriage. Okay, good. Not so good is the fact that she might have actually had 2 children out of wedlock. Ms. Winko, yes. Hey, some of the saints, they have checkered past. They have dubious, they're not perfect. There might be holy people, but they're holy in their context, as we'll see. So yeah, I mean, she didn't want to participate in this system of concubinage, but she apparently might have had 2 children, even though she wasn't married. Nevertheless, she wanted to be a sister, and so she gave herself to the religious life in 1836 and founded a group called the Sisters of the Holy Family, which is our second group of black, in this case women, but of black religious, religious in the Catholic Church, in the American Catholic Church. The first one was the Oblates of Oblate Sisters of Providence, yes, founded by Mother Mary Lang, servant of God. So this is the second existing group of, in this case, black religious sisters, black Catholic religious sisters in the country, founded by Henriette. And she used money that she got from her mother. Her mother developed mental problems, apparently, and deeded over the family property or whatever, the estate to Henriette. So she used that money to found her religious order. And they would tend to the poor people, to the sick, to the elderly. They would teach slaves, Miss Hoy, which was quite dangerous because you didn't typically teach the blacks, the slaves. You didn't teach them how to read and write. All you wanted them was for work. You didn't want to get them thinking or educated. So that could even be outlawed in some places. It was a very dangerous thing and even revolutionary thing to do, but she did it. She and her sisters did it. They would teach the slaves. The local bishop of New Orleans was kind of supportive, he of Venerable Henriette, but because they were a black sisterhood, even though they were Catholics, part of the church, he would not allow them or the members of the sisters of the Holy Family to wear any distinctive habit, any distinctive uniform to show themselves. I guess he thought that would be provocative to the whites in New Orleans. So don't show off, okay? And don't take public vows. He wouldn't let them take public vows. They took their vows as nuns privately. Venerable Henriette died when the Union Army had occupied New Orleans. So you can see from her date, the Civil War, I think the American Civil War, our Civil War ended in 1865, yes? So the Union armies had invaded New Orleans by this time and were occupying the city of New Orleans from the Confederacy, and that's when she died. And in her will, she was nice enough to free her slave Betsy in her will upon her death in 1862, excuse me. Which kind of begs the question, Mr. Whitehawk, I mean, what's she doing owning a slave? So apparently she owned a slave, even, while she was a religious sister. What does that tell me? It tells me that the history of the South is very complicated. I mean, slavery, from much of human history, was just a fact of life. Everyone owned slaves. And in the South, yes, it was mostly whites that owned slaves, but free blacks owned slaves. Native American tribes owned slaves. It was just considered completely normal. No one, you couldn't imagine that people would think about it. Some people did, God bless them, but apparently it didn't enter into her. Do you have a question or are you stretching? Yeah, go ahead.
People we wouldn't expect to own slaves, did they know she didn't treat slaves differently? Or
Not necessarily. I would like to say that Christian people, because you have to remember, a lot of the people who were slave owners in the South were Christians. They weren't atheists. They weren't pagans. Okay, most of them were Protestant Christians, the whites. And at least from what I've ever read about slavery, it could be quite brutal. Quite brutal. Did Catholics treat their slaves better? Not necessarily. The one difference might be that the Catholics would make sure that their slaves were baptized, whereas for Protestants, there was still a debate whether blacks were even human. So why baptize them? The Catholic Church even had that debate, but like in the 1500s when they first discovered the Native Americans and stuff like that, they're like, well, are they humans or are they just a form of animal? And the Catholic Church said, no. They're clearly human. And if they're human, they're made in the image and likeness of God. Jesus came to save them. So yes, of course, you don't enslave them. You offer them baptism. You try to, want to make them Christians or something. Which didn't always necessarily go so well. So that might be a different, but I can't say that Catholics necessarily treated their slaves any better. In some cases, maybe the religious orders, because like the Jesuits in Maryland, the Society of Jesus, they owned slaves. And they, from what I read in a book, they kind of treated them better. They still were their slaves. They were under the control of the Jesuit priests. Worked for them. So it's people are holy within their context. Remember when I talked about Blessed Pius IX, right? We talked about maybe it wasn't in this class. Oh, sorry, misremembering. I'm confusing classes. People are people are in their context. They're holy in their context. And sometimes things don't pop into their heads as necessarily wrong because it's just not part of their context. It's not what they're living with. But apparently God can work with that because she was still a good and holy woman. And she's recognized as such, at least at the venerable level. I can't say that she doesn't have any spots or blemishes, but like I don't. I'd like to be a saint. I mean, Ms. Uttenreither, I'm planning to print out the holy cards, which maybe I'll distribute someday in class. So when I die, Miss Francis, you can Dr. Dunn with his halo. But I'm imperfect. Sainthood doesn't mean perfection. Holiness doesn't mean perfection. It means you're trying. You're trying to do what God's will is, even if sometimes you don't always see it clearly. Okay. Henriette DeLeo, pray for us. Ugh. All right, what are we doing? Okay, we're doing Hinduism, yes? Back to Hinduism. Yes. Come on, there you go. Where did I stop? God bless you, Mr. Prince. Why do I deserve students like this, Miss Carney, you know? Miss Crumpton, we got to bring the pain on the court. The pain. What's the next game you got? Who are you playing? Huh? Saturday? Which university or college? Abington. Okay. You must crush them, Miss Crumpton. Okay. Oh, yeah, so I was talking about this. Yeah, that's right. Okay. The Vedanta and some of the views of the Vedanta and the Upanishads, okay, and the Maya, that the world is illusory. Okay, what did I want to say about that? Well, I already said this, but I'll finish it up, all right? I was talking about how the world is illusory, and the illusion that Hinduism wants to remove is this separation between ultimate reality and ourselves that we really derive from. And since we derive from ultimate reality, we are ultimate reality in a certain way. Okay, there's a kind of logic to that, isn't there? And that's what all the practices are meant to do. The worshiping of the gods, the sacrifices, yoga I mentioned. I'll talk about yoga more later. All of these kind of practices are meant to, in a religious sense, to lead you to ultimately to that realization that Brahman is you and you are Brahman. That essence of everything is not just part of you, it is you. So you are God, godlike. And that's what's going on when, does anyone go to yoga class? Anyone have a yoga class? Anybody? Anyone want to volunteer? Yes? No? No? Leave me hanging? Let me steam in my own juices? You, Mr. Belfield? Or Ms. Hoy? Are you pointing to Ms. Hoy? He's outed you, Ms. Hoy. You're a yogist. Do you do yoga, Ms. Hoy? No. Anyways, they like to incorporate Hindu practices, even though they've kind of de-Hinduized yoga in America. But, you'll come in and they'll be burning their little incense and stuff. And, you go namaste to the yogi or the person who is teaching the class. And namaste, te, is Sanskrit. It comes from the verb namati, which means I bow to you. Namaste, you. I'm bowing to you. Meaning I'm bowing to the divine which is in you, which is also in me as well. So you do it to me as well. Okay? So Brahman, ultimate reality. Actually, I'm going to get back to Brahman in another class. So, yeah. Once you achieve this knowledge that really you and Brahman and ultimate reality are the same, there's really no separate Atman to be reborn. There's no personal self to be reborn because there is no personal self. You're one and the same with ultimate reality. There's not two. Advaita. There's not two. It's all one. So there's no reason to be reborn. So you're liberated. You're freed. Freedom. So the question in Hinduism is not salvation, like in Christianity. Have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? It's freedom, liberation. That's what they're looking for in Hinduism. All right, I'll get to that later. Yeah, here it is. I have the Sanskrit. I am Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi, or this Atman is Brahman. These are other mantras that people will meditate on or say, I am Atma Brahma. This, my personal self is Brahman. Okay. All right, so moving out of the Shruti literature, we're going to go into the Smriti literature, which I know this is out of I got to put this in better order, but anyways, going back in the PowerPoint. The Smriti are divided into 5 groups. The Smriti, we have an epic story, a story called the Ramayana or Ramayan. Then we have another epic. This is an epic, a huge work called the Mahabharata. We could call it the great story of India, the way. Maha means great, and Bharata is another name for India. And within the Mahabharata, that's why there's no space here, there's actually a section which itself has been is so good that it's been separated out of the Mahabharata, this thing called the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord, which has its own separate status amongst the Smriti literature. The 4th level, you have Dharma Shastras, which are law books. It's a simple way to describe it. Dharma means law. Shastra is a book or a volume. So Dharma Shastras on various law codes. And then finally, the Puranas, the myths, mythologies. Puranas. The Smriti, as I told you, Miss Hedgepeth, is what is remembered. Yes? Did you remember your question? No. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. It's what's remembered. It's not what is heard. So it's more indirect. It's not eternal like the Shruti scriptures, but the Smriti are derived from the teachings found in the Shruti and developed out of it. You could say they're more reflections on the Shruti. The Smriti are reflections of the Shruti. Okay, but both are authoritative. The Shruti is always authoritative, of course, but the Smriti also has an authoritative role in Hindu belief and practice. And the Smriti includes an immense amount of literature. You know, we have historical epics like the Mahabharata, law books, mythologies, all this sort of stuff. Oh, it is an epic. I said it wasn't an epic, but it is. Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out which one I'm referring to here. The 5th Veda. Is that the Ramayana? Huh, I don't remember. Okay, my notes are a little bit unclear on this point. Do a little research. Let's start with the first one, the Ramayana, which is an epic. It's the story of Rama and Sita. Rama is the man and Sita is his wife. As you can see there on the PowerPoint, the Ramayana was written sometime between the 200s BC and the 200s AD. So for a period of 400 years that was composed. Supposedly by the Rishi Valmiki. It's attributed to him. And that's important in Hindu literature. A lot of times they want these rishis to be first-hand eyewitnesses, so you're getting a first-hand account, or at least it gives the impression of a first-hand account. Whether Valmiki even existed, I don't know. I don't know if he was a historical figure, but it's attributed to him. And what's the story about? It's about this king, Rama, or Ram, as he's sometimes called, who turns out to be kind of an appearance of the god Vishnu, but nobody really knows that yet. But anyways, and Ram is shown as the model of kingly virtue, of proper leadership. Ram is, where's my notes, but I got stuff in my memory as well. Ram is ousted, I forget how he's ousted from his throne, but he's exiled into the forest with his wife Sita, the queen, from his kingdom. Part of the story is that, he's in the forest, I think. Maybe this is before he's exiled. But anyways, Rama is in the forest, and this demoness I forget her name, but a female demon sees him and is attracted to him. And she wants him. Romantically, yes. But Ram is repelled by her, Ms. Moore. Yeah, yes, he kind of is like, he sees her, he's like, huh, whatever. Which pisses off the demoness. She's angry. So she goes to her brother, this demon Ravana, and tells him how she's been disrespected by this guy Ravana. And so Ravana gets back at Rama by kidnapping his wife, Queen Sita, and taking her to what today is called the country of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka. But it's kind of was considered part of India back then, I think. Sri Lanka. I'll show it to you on a map so you know where it is. Actually, no, what am I doing? Right here. There we go. Well, actually, you can't see it good. It's cut off. I want to do that. Have they changed it? There it is, the Gulf of America. I guess they did change it. Whatever. Okay. Where am I? Going over to India. There's India, and right down south of India, there's this island country, Sri Lanka, which also shares, as you might expect, a lot of its history with the Indian subcontinent. And so Ravana steals Sita and takes her down there to Sri Lanka and holds her, kidnaps her. And so the story is basically how Rama gets her back from the demon. And he's aided, Rama is aided by his friend Hanuman. Remember Hanuman? Mr. Belfield was mentioned in that charm. Was it you who read it, or was it Mr. Whitecock? Did you read the charm, right, for the love of a man? Passionate love of a man? Yeah, and it mentions Hanuman in it. Here's the monkey god, okay, related to the god, well, he will be a god, Rama, okay, this King Rama. And Hanuman's the monkey god, and he, gets together his monkey army, and they all kind of like attach their tails together and create a monkey bridge between the subcontinent and Sri Lanka. So Rama can march across it and fight with Ravana and get Sita back, which he does. Although it's not the happiest of stories for Sita, yes.
Turned out to be a vision of something.
Oh, he's seen out to be an appearance of the god Vishnu. Vishnu. We'll learn about Vishnu later. Yeah, Vishnu has a lot of appearances. Okay? Usually when there's disorder on earth, he comes to bring order. And so he does that in the case of Rama to bring, order to his kingdom. That he got Rama the demon to his. It's not a happy story. I mean, Rama is the hero, and he's like the ultimate king, the ideal ruler. And Sita kind of gets shafted in the story, his wife. I mean, she's kidnapped and he saves her. But as the story goes on, maybe if they just ended it there, fine. But the story goes on that, because Sita had spent time in the house of Ravana the demon, what did she do there? When she was with this male under his roof? Did she use her virtues, or was she a faithful wife? Yes. Did she do the nasty with the nasty? It's good. So people are talking after she comes back. And even Rama distrusts her. Rama's not 100% sure that she was faithful to him. So Sita has to prove her virtue. Sita, I think in the story, she sits down, she lights a fire and sits down in the fire to prove her virtue. If I dishonored our marriage by having sex with Ravana, then may I be consumed by the fire. She's not consumed. So that, proves to Rama that, she was a virtuous wife. She didn't do the nasty with Robin. Okay, that's proof. And this explains sometime why, and this is mentioned in the textbook, it used to be a practice for Hindu women sometimes to, when their husbands would die before them, and the husbands were cremated, that's how they'd burn up the bodies and bury them typically. Some wives would, in imitation of Sita, also offer themselves in the fire with their husband and be burned up alive with the body. Until Christians came and the British and kind of ended that practice. Anyway, and it's still outlawed but doesn't mean it doesn't still happen in India. Nevertheless, so that's based kind of on this story, this example of Sita burning herself in the fire to show her virtue. Okay, that's fine, but then again, the tongues keep wagging even after that. That's fine for Rama, but he believes her, but the tongues keep wagging, and Rama finds that it's kind of undermining his authority, Mr. Belfield. People are talking about his queen, saying she's an adulteress behind his back, and it's undermining his authority. So, sorry, Sita has to go. Kick her out. Sita is so distraught that she prays to the earth goddess to swallow her up, which the earth does, and swallows her up. I'll take it. So Sita gets shafted in the story, so it's not really, a woman-friendly story, I guess, but there you go. And as in your textbook, it might have mentioned. I mentioned this on the video for the canceled class that we had because of the weather the other week. The Ayodhya Mosque. Yes, anyone remember that from if you've watched the lecture, Ms. Boritz? Anyone watched the? Yeah, Ms. Francis, God bless you. And I mentioned the Ayodhya Mosque, which was built apparently on the site where Rama was born, and that's why the this Hindu crowd rioted and tore it down. Because, they saw it as a desecration of their religion, their heritage. Now the thing had been there for since the 1500s or something. So it had been there a long time, but that didn't matter. It was still the birthplace of Rama. And so they tore it down, and, they've only recently rebuilt it. But, Modi, who's the Prime Minister, Mahendra Modi, made a point. Prime Minister of India made a point of going to this new temple of Rama to celebrate its reopening after so many centuries of having been, not there because there was a mosque there. And it was seen as a political statement. Modi's trying to portray himself as Ram. I'm like the virtuous king Rama, the ideal king. I'm your ideal ruler. So vote for me in the next election. Make India great again. Not that India ever lost its luster. Okay. The Ramayana. Now we talk about the Mahabharata. The great story of the Bharata family. Or it's also kind of like the Epic of India. Okay? The great story of the Bharata family, which was written sometime between the 400s BC and the 400s AD. I did not put this on the PowerPoint. Apologize. The Mahabharata is attributed to the Rishi or seer named Vyasa, who apparently witnessed all these events. Don't know how, because it's such a huge epic. It covers all huge amount of time, but apparently Vyasa was there for everything. Okay. If you're a devout Hindu, you believe that, and okay, that's fine. Vyasa. It's a huge and extremely complex epic poem. In fact, scholars believe it is the longest epic poem known to humanity. It's over 200,000 some verses. Which, it's great. I'm not taking anything away from that fact. But of course, it's not a unified piece. It's been added on to over centuries and centuries. So, of course, if you keep adding on to stuff, it's going to become really long. It's kind of like, I don't know, the kernel for Microsoft operating system. It's like blow. It's like over the decades until you end up with a turd like Windows 11. You know? No, no Apple's fan. Apple fan. No. Linux. Anybody? Linux? No. So it's a huge thing because, look at the time period, it's like 800 years of compilation. But it does have an overarching storyline. There is an arc to it. I mean, even though it's comprised of various myths and legends and family histories and lineages, okay, as I told you, the Bhagavad Gita is this kind of philosophical religious work that's included, just as a sideline, they throw it in there. There's kind of also a repeat of the whole story of the Ramayana again in the Mahabharata. But what's this overarching story? Well, it's basically a long story about a king, his two sons, and the struggle for power after the king died. That's basically a thumbnail sketch of the Mahabharata, right? I'm not going to go into all the details, but there are two families, the Pandavas. Let's see if I put this on the PowerPoint or not. No, I did not. No, I didn't. Okay. The Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, as they're called, or the Pandavas. And the sons of Kuru, or the Kauravas. And if I remember correctly, the Pandavas are meant to be the good guys, and the Kauravas are the bad guys. Sons of Pandu and the sons of Kuru. Kind of like saying the Jews are the sons of Israel. Okay? Same kind of idea. It's an ancient ancestor of each group. Pandu and Kuru. And the eldest sons, Yudhishthira, is of the Pandavas, and Duryodhana are co-kings at this time. I believe this is after the death of the father, the king. So we have Yudhishthira and Duryodhana. What do they say? Dana, Yudhishthira. All right. So they're co-kings, Yudhishthira and Duryodhana. They're co-rulers. And there's an incident, where I think Duryodhana, if I remember correctly, Duryodhana comes to visit Yudhishthira. And I think he falls into a pool of water or something, a little pool of water. And Yudhishthira laughs at him, which is considered a sign of great disrespect to Duryodhana. So he takes that personally and makes Duryodhana angry. Okay? It's an insult. And so what happened, to get back at Yudhishthira, Duryodhana challenges him for his kingdom and even for his wife, who, if you read the story, his wife is actually shared amongst the brothers, the Pandavas. Incest much? Anyways. So he says, I'm going to take your wife, okay, or your kingdom, and we're going to have, we're going to throw dice for it. We're going to, they're going to play a game. They're going to gamble, okay? We're going to throw dice for it. And Yudhishthira is like, okay, forgetting the fact that he's a lousy dice player. And so he keeps losing. And so he loses his wife, or I should say, his brothers and his wife. Anyways. And he eventually loses the right to his kingdom. Duryodhana wins. And so Duryodhana exiles him. Does this sound familiar? He exiles him, Yudhishthira, to the forest for something like 12 or 13 years. He has to stay away in exile. And then for 1 year, he can come back. But he has to be incognito, in disguise, so no one will know that he's back. I don't know why, but that's just the rule. And when he does all of this, that Duryodhana asks, stretching again or asking? Stretching?
No.
Okay, wait 1 second, sir. And when he does all of this and comes back to the kingdom, Duryodhana would again give him his throne, and I guess there will be co-rulers again. Yes, sir.
Would come back for one day, meet a wife, would he just be there more? Why do you think if that works?
You mean like be in hiding and still be there? And yeah, well, because he's true to his word. Yeah, he's honorable. He's honorable. That's the point. That's an excellent question, Mr. Belfield, because that's what we're getting. The point we're getting to. Yudhishthira is honorable. He does exactly what Duryodhana asks him to do. Then he comes back and reveals himself. Say, okay, Duryodhana, give me back my kingship. Duryodhana is dishonorable. He refuses. He goes back on his word. He goes back on the agreement. All right. So now we're going to have, I should have put this on the PowerPoint. I can't believe I didn't put it on the PowerPoint. Really, Dr. Dunn? Well, it gives me something to write on the board. So, I'm moving around and I feel useful, Ms. Button right there. So guess what? We're going to have a war. The Battle of Kurukshetra. Kuru, yes, the sons of Kuru. So the land, Kshetra is a land, the land of Kuru, right? So the Battle of Kurukshetra, okay? Where all the Pandavas are on one side, all the Kauravas on the other side. There's going to be a complete and absolute bloodbath, which there is. I mean, in great detail, if you want it, it's online, the Mahabharata, in great detail. In fact, it brings disorder. In fact, it brings disorder to the universe because first, both sides fight according to the proper rules of war. So they're honorable in the rules of war, and then it just deteriorates into just a bloodbath and war crimes on both sides. So much so that, again, the god of Vishnu has to appear to restore some kind of order. But it's a very major event for Hindu thought about time because it inaugurates the last age of destruction, which we're living in right now. Okay, this age of deterioration, it's so bad that it begins this last and final age of everything, our ultimate end is complete destruction at the end of time, when the universe will end, and so we can blame that on the battle between these two groups of people, at least if you're a Hindu. Within the Mahabharata, as I said, there is a book. It's not very long, actually, that at the point of the Battle of Kurukshetra, one of the sons of Pandu, his name is Arjuna, is his name. Oh, that's where I put the Kurukshetra. His name is Arjuna. He's a warrior, and he's on his chariot, and he's has his hand raised. He's about to call for the beginning of hostilities. As he is doing this, he looks across at his opponents, who are related to him. Yes, I mean their father, their father was king, and so Yudhishthira is his brother apparently, or maybe his cousin. But I think he's or Duryodhana, I should say. The Kauravas are related to the Pandavas, and on the other side, supporting the Kauravas are his teachers, yogis, holy men, including warriors, friends, people he knew. And now he's going to have to give the order to start the war, which is going to kill all these people whom he loves and respects. And he has a crisis of faith. Arjuna does. Has a crisis of faith. He won't do it. And with that action begins a conversation between Arjuna and his charioteer, who just happens to be the god Vishnu, by the way, about what is the purpose of all of this. Because he can't bring himself to do it. He's like, what is the purpose of this? That we're going to kill each other over what? Kingship? Just walk away, And he has this conversation with, actually it's Krishna. You can see him here in the chariot. The blue indicates his godliness. It's Krishna, but it's actually Vishnu, God Vishnu, in one of his forms, many appearances. And so they have this conversation where Krishna convinces Arjuna to follow his dharma. He has to follow his dharma. Okay, that's the meaning of life. He is a warrior, and so sometimes as a warrior you have to kill people and break things. And that's your dharma. That is your duty of your position. And so that's what you have to do. In fact, to not do that would be improper, would be wrong for Arjuna to not do that, because that's what he has to do. He's supposed to do it. He's a warrior. A warrior who won't fight is not following his dharma. So he has to fulfill that dharma. That's what our Krishna, aka Vishnu, convinces him to do. Because even doing your own duty, your dharma, even though defectively, even if you do it badly, like you're an artist but not a good artist, but you're following your dharma as an artist, that's still better than doing someone else's dharma. Like, I'm an artist, but I'm going to try to be a warrior, or I'm a warrior, but I'm going to try and be a holy man. Well, if that's not your dharma, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And so even you could be the best holy man on the planet, or holy woman. But if that's not your dharma, if your dharma was to be a warrior or a merchant or a ruler, doesn't matter. You're disrespecting your dharma, even if you perform it well. Much better that you were even a bad businessman, if that's your dharma, than being like an outstanding holy person. So the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, the song of the Lord, is what it means. Gita is song, Bhagavad means Lord or Master, whom Lord Krishna or Vishnu, which was written around the 1st century and added to the Mahabharata. Is considered by a lot of Hindus, venerated very highly, even though it's not Shruti. It's considered like the best summary of the Hindu religion that you'll find. And that's why I give you some selections from the Bhagavad Gita for our readings. Hopefully you've read them by now. Some selections from it. It is quite beautiful. Whatchamacallit. It's a good summary of the various responses that people take for living the Hindu life, in which the author of the Gita, whoever it was, thinks is the best. So it's a concise guide to Hindu philosophy. During the course of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna reveals his identity to Arjuna as the supreme being himself. Okay? I have bhakti and then put bhakti. Yeah. There we go. It's from the Bhagavad Gita number 9. Would anyone like to read this, where Krishna reveals himself as he is Brahman, actually. Of course, he's also Vishnu, but just go with it. He's one of the appearances of Vishnu. He is actually the supreme reality and ultimate reality itself that has many, I got you, 1 second, that has many forms and many names and many faces, but is actually worshipped. The same thing as being worshipped by all. Go ahead, Ms. Warren.
To the ancestors. I am the herb. I am the mantra. I am the clarified butter. I am the fire. I am the.
Where are we? Sorry. Oblation.
Oblation.
Good. Offering.
I am the father of the squirrels, mothers, the main fire, grandfathers, filter, syllable, Ray, Kasama, Yonder. Treat us to pass their reward for this whole refugee free origin, solution,
Continuity. Repository.
Church seed.
Good.
I radiate, I will blow the rain, and I let it come down. I am immortality and death. I am the existent and the non-existent.
Excellent. So from the Bhagavad Gita, number 9, okay. So basically, he's everything. He's listing all the stuff that belong to Hindu religion and practice, and saying that's all me. Okay. So the dharma or the ritual is me. It's all directed towards me, Krishna, really Vishnu. The offering offered to the ancestors, the spirits of the ancestors. And he names some of the things that will be involved in the sacrifices, like offering plants and herbs, praying the mantras, yes, Samaveda, stuff like that. Butter, ghee, clarified, kind of like melted butter. Okay, of course, the fire stuff. I'm father and mother. So here we're getting into like the kind of duality of opposites, or related things, I guess you could say. Father, mother, okay, even grandfather. I am the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur. So I am the Vedas. Okay, remember the Vedas are the sound of the universe. So they come directly from ultimate reality. So they are directly divine and perfect. So that's another claim to divinity, or being the same as Brahman. But notice, someone might have noticed that there are only the 3, right? Where's the Atharva, right, Mr. Vital? There's no Atharva mentioned. No Atharva. So if the Bhagavad Gita dates from like 100 BC, the 100s BC, kind of gives us scholars a little bit of an indication of when the Atharva might have finally been composed and added on to the Vedas. We want to talk about that. So anyway, so the 3 Vedas are mentioned. And here we get into, again, the dualities. I am the sun, I radiate, meaning I am the sun, I radiate like the sun, but I also withhold the rain. I dry up the earth. And I also let it come down again. I make it rain, make it wet. I'm living forever, or deathlessness, but I'm also death. I'm existence itself, but I'm also non-being. How does that work? I don't know. I exist, but I also don't exist, but I'm both. I'm opposites. I'm all the opposites. I reconcile all the opposites. There's a fancy way of saying I'm the ultimate reality, Arjuna. And so worship me. Place your trust in me. Give devotion, or bhakti as it's called, devotion, bhakti to me. And perform your dharma, and don't worry about the rest. Let me reconcile the unreconcilable, or the irreconcilable, because I'm Krishna. Okay. Really Vishnu. Wink, wink, Mr. Prinzio, right? Okay. The Dharma Shastras. What are the Dharma Shastras? It's a name for a manual of law or a code of conduct in Hindu life. Tells you specifically how to live. The Dharma, your ethics that you should have as a Hindu man or Hindu woman, whatever your position is in society. So there are all sorts of rules if you're... yes. All sorts of rules. If you're a student, this is how you're supposed to be a good student. If you're a merchant, this is how you're supposed to be a merchant. A wife, a son, blah, 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 blah. You get the point, right? The most famous, or at least the Dharma Shastra that concerns us now in this age, is the Manu Smriti, or the laws of Manu. Each age has its own lawgiver. It also has its own Adam, its first man and stuff. And so the lawgiver for our age is Manu. Other ages have other lawgivers, but the one we deal with, if you're a Hindu, is Manu. And the laws of Manu were written sometime between 100 BC, 300 AD. And so it's the most important source book for Hindu ethics. As I said, written by Manu, who's a mythological figure. We don't know if he actually existed. He's kind of like Noah in the Bible, We don't know if he actually existed, but there's a story about him. And it comes in 12 books, and it teaches all sorts of stuff: religion, law, custom, politics, basically how to live your dharma, your duty, how it should be performed according to your social class, your caste, according to the stage of life that you live in. And so there are basically 4 stages of life. This is very male-centric, so just go with it. student. First, you're a student of the Vedas. You have a guru who teaches you the Vedas. Then you become a householder. You take a wife and you establish a household, children, a business, some work that you're doing to make money. Then later in life, you become a hermit. You start living, you go out and live in the forest alone, oftentimes. Say, well, what happens to the wife? So, it's like, not about her. You become a hermit in the forest where you live alone and study the Vedas full time, stuff like that. And then finally you become an ascetic. You become like a holy man. You kind of perform your own death ritual, and you're now dead to the world. You go around begging and stuff like that. Those are supposed to be the 4 ideal stages of life. Actually, it's really not that unusual. I mean, if you think about it, it's nothing necessarily you could think in non-religious terms. I mean, how do you live your life? You're students now. Once you get out of college, you might be thinking about how you're going to plan your life, get married, or maybe people will be single, but get an apartment or your own home and move away from your family, start having your own, have a job so you can make money. As people get older, they do become in a way sort of hermits or enter into that hermit kind of idea where they become maybe more spiritual. You start seeing, they start going to mass every day. They get up because a lot of people are getting up early anyways. They might as well go see people at mass. So they go to church or they go to synagogue. And as you get older, you kind of stay home. You don't go out so much. Maybe you sit there and read your Bible or watch TV or something. And kind of similar kind of progression of life. Finally, we come to the Puranas, which are the myths. That's what a Purana is, myths about the ancient world. And that's exactly what the word means in Sanskrit. Purana is old or ancient, so olden times. And there are a lot of Puranas, a lot of myths, written in the AD period, 400 to 1500, on all sorts of things. Especially creation stories, as I put there in the definition, how the world was made, where it came from, stories about ancient kings of India and of the planet, and other material. Usually each mythology is dealing with a particular god, or in some cases goddess, as we'll learn. There are different voices throughout. Usually it's dealing with gods, but you also have literature that appears dealing specifically with the mother goddess. A lot of the Puranas, or some of the Puranas, are focused on Krishna. He becomes very popular. Krishna, who appears in the Bhagavad Gita. So it's complex. There's all sorts of myths about all sorts of different topics and they're sometimes it's difficult to find any kind of unanimity or uniformity between them. But they're there. And, their stories, they govern, people know the stories, and it kind of teaches them about Hindu beliefs indirectly through these mythologies. As I said, we'll hear a little bit more about this when we talk about, the mother goddess. I'm saying the mother goddess, but the wife of Shiva, who goes by different names, Parvati, Devi, the Devi, and Kali, okay? And she comes out of the belief in the mother goddess. For women, women needed some stake in the Hindu religion because it is, as you've noticed, it is very male-centric. And so you have these myths about the mother goddess or female goddess, who in some cases might be more powerful than the male gods all put together, come out, of the Puranas, out of the Smriti, the mythologies, and become very important for some Hindus, especially if you're female. Okay. What are you doing here? All right. Well, let's see here. Let me see what my time is. Yeah, we're there. Okay, so I'll end here. We'll come back and continue talking about Hinduism on Tuesday. Ultimate reality. God bless you all. Have a good weekend. You're welcome, miss. Have a good day, miss. Good day, sir.
Thank you. Here we go.
Have a good day, Mr. Whitehawk.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you, sir. You too. You're welcome, miss. Have a good day, miss. All right. You gonna make it? All right.
Get you through the curves. Sure.
You too, sir. All righty. Have a good day, everybody. Try to turn this off.